Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast with Pastor James C. Johnson, a ministry of NorthStone Baptist Church in Pensacola, Florida.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. We are blessed to have two brand new guests on the podcast today. My son, Mark Johnson, he is Brittany and I's oldest son, as well as a member of our church and an individual who serves our community through local law enforcement. Peter Gallion is with us. So let's make both of them feel welcome. We're so glad that they're here. Yes.
Good to be here. Thank you.
So if you would, each of you take just a few moments and give us additional introductory information. Mark, let's start with you. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I am the oldest son of my dad here, and I have been in the ministry with him, like this whole time. Feels like my entire life. So I've been around church folks, around ministry, different environments, stuff like that. So definitely had a privilege to be along the front lines of proclaiming the gospel, and it's really been an impact in my life, and I've had great friendships and met a lot of great people that have made an impact on me. Right now I'm currently at Bob Jones University studying to be a Spanish teacher, so I'm looking forward to that. I have one more semester until I'm done, ready to start my career, so looking forward to the future.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Mark. Brother Gallion?
So something we have in common is we're both the oldest of our families.
Nice.
So I'm the oldest of six. I grew up in Minnesota, and the Lord called me here to Pensacola, Florida. So I've been here for the past, if you include college, about 15 years. So the Lord's really blessed having me here down here. I've really enjoyed being in God's country, what I call it, in Florida, and being near the water. And
Yeah. You and I have the Minnesota thing in common. We
Yes.
both grew up in Minnesota, didn't know each
Yes,
other, of course.
didn't know it, no.
But the Lord called you down here, and then we realized that. That's so cool. I tell people that since I grew up in Minnesota, I have snow shoveling skills
Yes.
that are going to waste down here, but I'm completely fine with that.
I'm okay with that as well, yes.
Yeah. So as a police officer, the stereotype is that you like donuts.
Yes.
So tell us about your thoughts on that stereotype. Are you a donut guy yourself?
So I am a donut guy. However, I don't think it's because I'm a police officer.
Sure.
That is a stereotype that has been a stereotype for a long time. Because of that stereotype, I make it a point to never eat a donut in uniform, just because I know that
Okay.
that stigma is out there. So you won't catch me going through the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through in my police car. You won't see any of that going on. But when people point that out, I ask them, would you really trust anybody if they didn't like a donut? So
Wait,
it's not just cops. But on that topic though, do you know where that stigma came from?
I don't know.
So back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, police officers, when they worked that overnight shift, there wasn't many places open to eat except for the donut shops that were preparing for that morning rush. And so they would often invite the police officers in there in order to, have a breakfast, have a quick bite to eat or whatever. And so since those are the only things that were open, cops were often in those donut shops.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then it just turned over the years to that stereotype.
Sure,
So
sure. How long have you been with the Escambia County Sheriff's Department?
I've been with them since 2015.
Okay.
So that's
9
almost 9
or
years
so,
now.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
And have you served in law enforcement in another department, another agency, anywhere
Nope,
else?
this is my first
Okay.
department. So
And you're a sergeant
I am.
right now, yeah.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if you do traffic duty as a sergeant. Do you pull people over? And if so, what is the craziest excuse anybody's ever given you for when you catch them speeding?
Sure. So as a sergeant, my primary duty isn't to be out pulling cars over all the time. However, the uniqueness of my position is I do have the ability to do that, and I'm still out to be on the road. As far as an excuse or something like that, I got quite a few of them that would say, this is I just got this car.
Oh.
And
You're tough
in
guy.
my thought, I'm thinking, okay, so is the speedometer different from any other car you drive? I know some cars may seem like they go faster than others, or a truck may feel different than a car driving. But
Yeah.
usually when they give me that excuse, they're basically telling me they weren't paying attention. I'll get another excuse a lot about, I wasn't familiar with the area. I'm new to this area. And as far as I know, all speed limit signs look the same.
Right.
So again, you're telling me you weren't paying attention.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
I get a few of them that, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. All right,
Oh,
well, we're just gonna wait then. Yeah, we're gonna keep on going because people could just say that to get out of the ticket or
oh, sure.
to get me off their back sooner. So
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us and the Northstone and Strength for Life viewers that are watching maybe the most frequent area you visit so that you camp out and look for people that are speeding so we can slow down? And
Right, and he's
um,
saying this for his mother's
yeah.
sake.
yes, of
Okay,
course.
because
Not for
Mrs.
me.
Johnson,
Not
she
for
has
me.
a petite little foot, but it's a heavy foot.
Hey, 9 Mile Road here, right by Bridlewood, right by Beulah Road. Watch out. I think that's near your home, isn't it?
Right, it
Yeah.
So
is.
be
Yeah.
careful during that area.
Right, right,
Good to
yes.
know.
Maybe right out front of the church. That'd be a good
Right.
spot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, what's the fastest miles per hour you've caught somebody speeding and ultimately gave them a ticket for?
I think obviously the faster people go would be on the interstate. So I've clocked people going 95 plus on the interstate,
Okay.
which in comparison they're really only going 20 to 25 over.
Okay.
So those would probably be the highest speeds that I've caught people going at. But in my opinion, the more dangerous speeds would be in the residential neighborhoods.
Mhm.
If the posted speed limit is 35 and you're going 70 or 80 in there,
Wow. Yeah.
that's doubling the speed limit, and
Yeah.
there are actually harsher fines for doubling the speed limit
And doubling the danger.
and doubling the
Probably,
danger.
yeah.
Absolutely. So, I would focus more on the safety in those neighborhoods. In our area, the Florida Highway Patrol mainly stays on those interstates,
Mhm.
so we're mainly in the side roads, the highways rather than those interstates. So.
Okay.
Interesting. Can you tell us about what got you into being a police officer? Did you study in college like criminal justice, or what got you into it?
Absolutely. So I had the thought to be a law enforcement officer my entire life. My dad was a police officer,
Mm.
so that put the bug in my ear in order to have that desire. Um, actually, when I did come down to Pensacola Christian College, I had an undeclared major, so I didn't know exactly what the Lord wanted me to do at that moment. But I always had in the back of my head that I think it would be a cool idea, a cool thing to do what Dad did, or cool
Mm.
because I hear all the stories that he would tell me.
Yeah.
And it was a unique job simply because you weren't sitting behind a desk all day. It wasn't the same thing every single day. I got to hear stories about him helping other people, and it's not just putting people in jail every day. It's I got to help this person. I got to do this with this person. I got to, be there for this family or whatever. So I always thought that was a cool thing, and I just gave it to the Lord, and He guided me. And then about my sophomore year of college, I just felt led of the Lord to pursue that career in law enforcement, and so I did study 4 years at PCC for criminal justice, and then was hired on with Escambia County right after college.
That's great.
Awesome.
And tell us if you could share your testimony just a little bit,
Sure.
And then how your Christian testimony impacts the way you participate in law enforcement.
Absolutely. So I had the privilege of growing up in a Christian home, and we talked about this a second ago in Minnesota, um, and my mother was my elementary teacher. I was homeschooled for several years, and I was 6 years old. It was actually March 31st of 1999. I still remember the date. She was giving me the Bible lesson for that day, and she went through the whole plan of salvation, then just asked me if I would like to do that, if I would like to accept Christ as my Savior, and I said yes. And I still remember the decision that I made. I remember the moments right afterwards and feeling, excited about it and wanting to tell other people about it. So I know it was a genuine decision that I made, and I understood what I was doing then. And I really truly do believe that, my life is 100% changed because of following the Lord's will and being saved. And so since then, I've had some doubts throughout my Christian experience. When I was 12 years old, I did doubt my salvation, but again, the Lord used my mother to just open the scriptures again and point to, hey, did you do this?
Mhm.
And yeah, yes, I did. So I just needed to rest in God's promises and realize that, He's gonna hold up His end of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to do anything on my end except for to trust Him.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. And doubts are common among Christians, but
Absolutely.
in some ways too, they're healthy because it turns us back to the Word, and it's
Yes.
like, okay, I believe this. Do I believe this?
Right.
And people that doubt are among some of the greats, because even John the Baptist, the greatest man born among women, had seasons of doubt. I love John 10:28, the idea of once you're in the hand of God, no man can
Amen.
pluck you out. That really has helped
I
me.
think part of it too is, it's so simple. And so in our minds, we think, is this all we only have to do? Like,
Right.
shouldn't there be something more I have to do?
Just
But if you
believe,
go
yeah.
back to the Bible and realize, no, just do what the Bible says, and it's
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even like great men like Abraham, who like God appeared to him, they still had doubts. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter how grandiose it gets to be. Like people are humans, and we're
Absolutely.
gonna have doubts about things.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mark. Like people are like, "Well, God, if you just show yourself to me, I'd never doubt again." Well, He did it.
Yeah.
Right,
Like,
right.
Yeah, we tend to be that way, and He has revealed Himself to us powerfully through His Word and through His creation. Brother
Absolutely.
Gallion, a couple years ago, the defund the police movement was a big deal in the headlines and things. What are your thoughts about that movement? Like, do you feel like there were any valid concerns that people had, and maybe even share a biblical perspective on some of that?
Sure. So, in my experience so far, there are a lot of bad apples, if you will, in any profession.
Yeah.
So not every law enforcement officer is a good person. There's going to be, and they're not all Christians either. So there are a lot of sinners doing that job. So there's people that are doing the job for different reasons, personal reasons, to better themselves, not doing it for the right reasons. So I will admit that there are bad apples there. So some of the concerns may be valid, but in the defund the police movement, I think you have a lot of ill-informed people, and they jump to conclusions and they jump on whatever bandwagon, whatever agenda is being pushed at the moment. So I think society as a whole has really shot themselves in the foot, because we're going to defund the police. We're going to take money away from them, so we can't train them as well. We can't get quality candidates in the door to be law enforcement officers. So then in turn, we have undertrained officers now because you're not going to pay them as much. And then now we're going to have to lower our standards to even attract people to come in, because the good people aren't coming anymore, right? So that ends up having a law enforcement product that is undertrained and a low quality candidate again. And that is just a vicious cycle, because now you have these undertrained individuals that are going to make bad decisions again. You have bad citizen law enforcement contacts, and it's just going to be that circle back and forth. So it's a sad situation. Thankfully, locally here, I haven't experienced any of that.
I was going to ask you.
Movement.
How that's impacted this area.
But I know there are agencies around the country, especially some of these bigger ones, where they're leaving those agencies in droves. And they're coming to places like Florida. They're coming to these more conservative states to work, because it's not worth it to be up there anymore. So I hate it for those agencies, those areas up north, or some of these other liberal areas, because there's good people that live there. But they're gonna suffer because of that movement.
Yeah, for sure. And can you tell us a little bit about what you do for training, like as a police officer? What kind of they talk about the training you have to do. Is it like an extensive kind of thing to like handle your emotions and to de-escalate situations? And how does all that work in training?
Yeah, so when I first got hired on with the sheriff's office, I had to go through about an 8-month police academy, and that was a good experience for me. I do believe that my time at Pensacola Christian College really prepared me for that police academy. It was more of legal training, like going through Florida state law and different tactics that you can use. So it was a long process. It was 8 months long. And we go do anything from high liability things like your shooting, your driving range. I had to get tased with a taser. That wasn't really fun.
Oh boy! Wow. Okay.
I had to be pepper sprayed. And the thought behind that is if we're going to give you these weapons to use, you need to know what the effects are. And that also goes hand in hand with people not getting, law enforcement officers not getting out of hand. Like, hey, I know what this is doing to that person. I'm not going to overdo it. So yeah, I got pepper sprayed. I got tased, and between those two experiences, I will say I'd rather be tased again.
Okay.
because that pepper spray is no joke.
Okay. Yeah.
Neither one sounds fun. Neither
Yeah,
one
right.
sounds
Yeah.
I've seen videos. It's never happened to me, but
Yeah.
I've seen videos of people going through the pepper spray, and it's incredible. Yeah.
And then when you're done with the pepper spray, you go home and take a shower. It reactivates, and you
Oh,
get it
yeah.
the second time.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not fun.
Now, I was a police chaplain in Muncie, Indiana for 6 years. So I
Yes.
did a lot of ride-alongs with officers, and primarily the ministry of a chaplain is ministry to the officers more
Sure.
than it is the victim of crime. People kind of have that perception, but really officers see a lot of stuff, and
Absolutely.
it affects you emotionally and spiritually. And
Yeah.
I was really privileged to serve in that way. However, I'm thrilled that they didn't pepper spray me as part of or the initiation or requirement.
As far as other training, with me being on the SWAT team, I have had the opportunity to receive more training than just the average deputy.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons I did join the SWAT team, is because I knew there'd be more opportunities for that. So I've had more opportunities in firearms training, with, being able to handle the firearms, different entry tactics and de-escalation tactics and stuff like that. I think you mentioned something about your emotions as well.
Yeah.
We do get annual or biannual certifications or training classes that we have to go through for that kind of thing. The interesting thing, and some of the sad part about that, is you have secular psychologists and stuff and people come in to teach those classes, and so I don't get as much from those because I can look at things from a biblical perspective, and I can look at the Bible for answers to how to deal with my emotions. And not all these psychologists have all the answers. They have what they believe are the answers.
Right.
But I have the true answers.
Amen. Yeah. Yeah. I was listening to somebody recently talk about how easy it is to get your emotions ratcheted up in a situation. And they said that if an officer is by himself, he typically will control his emotions better than when he has a partner. And the point that they made was, if you're a little bit more emboldened to be
Sure.
aggressive, if you've got another partner with you that has your back.
That could be.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then they said too that male officers approach a potential perpetrator, and he's a high T guy, and the officer's a high T guy, and sometimes the emotions just get out of whack, and it's almost a competition for who's more alpha,
Sure.
the authority, the officer, or the guy that was speeding or committing a crime or something.
Yeah.
So those emotions get out of control
They
sometimes.
can get out of control a lot, and it's interesting you say that. I actually have had the opposite interaction with the emotion side of things. I've noticed that if you have one officer that is dealing with the situation, his emotions are getting high, it's good to have another officer there
Okay.
that isn't 100% dialoguing or in depth in that dialogue, and he can tap him on the shoulder and say, "Hey, they're calling you on the radio. You need to go handle that real quick," and then step in.
Sure.
And that's saved a lot of officers' careers
Yeah.
because he's going down that path
Good.
of
Good.
gonna lose his emotions and lose control.
Yeah.
But because he had that partner to pull him back, say,
Mhm.
"Hey, take a break."
Yeah.
That
Good.
helped.
That's
And,
very helpful.
what are things that ratchet up the emotions? Is it typically people being contrary, defiant, argumentative, that kind of thing?
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
There are some officers that struggle keeping their personal and professional life separate. So when you have a suspect that starts digging into that personal life, like maybe not calling them out by name, but talking about their wife, talking about their kids, stuff like that. Obviously in a vague manner, but still that can go deep. And sometimes that's all it takes for somebody just to lose their emotions, lose control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
for sure. What about the fitness side of things? Like, how do you stay in shape as a police officer? Because like my dad and I, we love to run, so we run almost like every morning we can together. We'll try to run together while I'm here. But do you do runs by yourself, or do you run with your team, your squads, or like?
Yeah, and I've
you-
run with you, Brother
Yeah,
Gallion, of course. Yeah.
So, I am not on the running level that you both are. Like I've seen your Strava posts, and it's insane.
Yeah, Mark, you
Um,
are. Yeah. Yeah.
And your dad's not far behind you.
Wow, I
You guys
appreciate
are
that.
both amazing. I do run a lot. I actually got the love of running from my wife, and that's actually how we met. We got closer together. We trained for a half marathon.
Oh, that's sweet.
And so we
That's cool.
met, and I had ulterior motives for training for this half marathon. I think she just wanted to be friends doing it. I was like, I'm going to train with you with this marathon or half marathon so I get to know you better and we can spend time together.
Right. So it's like
So
Riz is what the kids are
yeah.
calling it nowadays. W Riz or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I run quite a bit. I've tried to stay in shape. Thankfully, the sheriff's office does have a gym, so I several nights a week I'll go work out after shift, and that kind of helps you decompress a little bit. When you're pushing that weight, you can just release all that.
Sure.
Think about other things, and we talk about endorphins a lot. That really does getting that heart rate up does make you feel better. So
for sure.
that does help. There are several standards that we have. There's a standard that you have to meet when you first get to the sheriff's office. Right now, there isn't a lot set in place to keep that standard. Like once you're in, you're in.
Okay.
So you do see some law enforcement officers, especially locally here, that could let themselves go if they don't have that personal decision to stay in shape. We're actually working to get that changed because I think it is good to have that accountability to stay in shape, because if you don't have that ability, if you let yourself go physically, how are you going to be able to stay in that fight?
Right.
You may lose that fight, and that your backup may be too far away. Thankfully, with being on the SWAT team, I do have a higher standard that I'm held to.
Okay.
We have a standard where every quarter we have to do our entry class, our fitness standards for the SWAT team, and that is we have to do 50 push-ups in under 2 minutes. We have to do 65 sit-ups in under 2 minutes, and then 10 pull-ups, and then run a mile and a half less than 12 minutes.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
it's not unattainable, but it's something where if you don't train or don't do anything all quarter, then you're going to be struggling that training day.
Gotta make sure you cut off the donuts for sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's good that you have that accountability. I
Yes.
think definitely. Now, of course, you're a member of our church, and we have other officers that are members of our church. And one of them was telling me about you, that your reputation is that you're fast, and that you have pursued on foot, hurdling fences and all kinds of stuff.
Yes.
And so they respect you for how you do stay in shape and take all that very seriously. And then they count on you when guys are running, and
Yeah.
you gotta chase them down. Now, I think I'm right to say that the famous TV show Cops
Yes.
was in Pensacola a couple times. Recently, I think they recorded some stuff.
Yes.
But I've seen video clips of you on TV, the TV show Cops. So what was that experience like?
So that was one of the most unique experiences I've ever been in and had gotten to experience. When I first got approached about being on that show by my captain at the time, I was really intimidated. I was like, I don't want my every single move to be put on TV,
Yeah.
But they reassured me, hey, like we trust you. Like you have a reputation around here of doing things the right way. We believe you can do it. So I was really happy at that moment that my character preceded me and that they trusted me to do that. But I was still, the fact that I knew that they were going to be riding with me 24/7, or every shift for the foreseeable future, that was kind of intimidating to me.
Sure. Oh, to anybody that would be. Yeah.
But once I got to meet the camera crew, there's actually two members. There was a camera guy and there was the sound guy. And the sound guy, he had the long boom with the big old fluffy microphone on the end of it, and that's all his job was, to walk around and hold that thing to make sure they get the audio. And they mic'd me up. I while I'm working, I had a mic on my my vest and everything. So it was really, really unique. You felt like you were going 100 miles an hour all shift long because you didn't want to take any downtime, because you felt like these people are in here videoing me, trying to see what this is like. Like, I don't want to disappoint them. I want to try to get them some good episodes. So you were always looking for a car to pull over. You were always going to that priority one call, trying to get them a good show. I did make it on 3 or 4 episodes.
And how can people find that if they want to see that? Like, that's on
Season-
YouTube. I've seen some of
It's
it.
on Amazon, last I checked, and it's season 31.
Okay.
I think one of them is called Formula for Disaster. It's an individual that I did pursue on foot. We hopped a fence. tackled him in these woods, and we hauled him out, and here he is, saying that he's stealing baby formula and stealing from some other stores and selling it on the street. So a very odd thing to steal, and odd thing to deal in.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting scenario.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that because like all these TV shows you see about like cops, whatever, the perpetrator always runs and they always end up in the woods somehow. Like, why is it always in the woods?
Well,
Like
it's interesting because where we were running, there wasn't a lot of woods. But you're right, he did end up going towards the woods. So I don't know if they feel like they can hide out there
yeah,
better,
I
or
know.
there's not a lot of cover in someone's front yard. So
Yeah, right.
Interesting.
but another aspect of having them ride along is your interactions with the public do change a little bit, because and it makes sense. If I was a law enforcement officer coming to talk to you, and you have this camera guy with his big camera on his shoulder and a boom mic in your face, you're gonna be apprehensive to talk to me because you don't know what's going on.
Sure, yeah.
There are some people that knew that was the cop's crew, or they knew that it was possibly filming for TV, so they would automatically turn off.
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to be on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I early on had to come up with an explanation as to why they were with me,
Mm-hmm.
and it turned into, they're just here to make sure I'm doing my job correctly.
Mhm.
And that usually would
Which
calm
is still
them down.
true.
They are,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I also sometimes would say, well, that you're not on TV, because they weren't truly on TV at that moment.
Yeah.
Only if they decided to be stupid or make some, act out or cause a scene,
Right.
would they potentially be on TV. So
And did people have to sign off? Criminal, like
that is one of
perpetrators?
the most amazing things there is. Every person that goes on the cop show does have to sign a waiver allowing their face to be put on TV. And
Okay.
if they don't sign that waiver, you're not going on TV.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So when you watch that show and you see this knockdown, drag out fight, or this guy that ran is complaining and yelling, at some point he calmed down enough and signed his life away basically to be put on TV.
Okay.
So what's the order of events? Like handcuffs on the back of the car, and then take out a pen and start.
Pretty much. Yeah, there are several of them that in handcuffs, they were signing away, and they didn't even read what they were signing. They're like, "We just need you to sign this real quick." Oh yeah, go ahead.
Wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, homelessness is something we're burdened for.
Mhm.
I of course served at the rescue mission in Indianapolis for 8 years,
Right.
and there's a lot of homelessness here in Pensacola.
Uh-huh.
Our church has teamed up with Waterfront Rescue Mission and Ministry Village, and
Mhm.
we're trying to do what we can to minister to people in need like that. Do you encounter homelessness a lot as an Escambia County Sheriff's deputy, and how do you guys deal with that? Like, do you work with certain rescue missions?
So we do encounter a lot. The homeless, they typically are in a life of drugs as well,
Mm-hmm.
and that in turn leads to a life of crime. So we do come in contact with them quite often. Um, we don't work hand in hand with a specific mission. I am very familiar with the Waterfront mission. There are several others. There's it's called the Loaves and Fishes. There's one called the Heavenly Blessings.
Yeah.
And those are programs that these individuals can be a part of. We won't transport them there. If they ask us, now we can recommend, hey, these are some available to you.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't hand in hand take them there. One issue that I have found is a lot of these programs, these homeless shelters, they have standards. That you have to be drug free. You have to follow these rules in order to be able to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see a lot of these homeless population making a conscious decision not to go there and not to receive that free help
Mhm.
because they don't want to submit to those rules. So
Right,
that's the
yeah.
sad part about it.
Yeah.
So we do encounter them a lot.
Yeah, some people would rather live on the street than have the accountability.
100%.
And
Yes.
I've heard people describe it this way, and I say this out of a burden, a sincere burden for these
Mhm.
people's plight, but it's not really a homeless crisis in America as much as it is what you've alluded to, a drug crisis.
100%.
And so, yeah, and a lot of that
Yes.
drug stuff leads to crime, and so
Mhm.
they don't want to have to be drug free. And same thing at Good News Mission, where it's like if you're here, you're working. If you're here, you're gonna have to pass drug tests.
Right.
So they're gonna give them what they need, which is a roof over their head and
Mhm.
food. And even at Good News, they give them medical treatment. I know at Waterfront as
Mhm.
well.
Yep.
But some people, sadly, are so enslaved by drugs
Mhm.
that they're like, no, I'd rather live under a bridge, sleep on a sidewalk, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and have my drugs.
I know a lot of bigger cities, like I'm just bigger cities. Like Pensacola is a smaller city compared to these like New York City and Philadelphia and Los Angeles, those kind of big cities. But I know they have like addiction recovery programs. They send a lot of like homeless people too, so they can get kind of like the drug addiction thing solved, and that way they can make a pathway to being clean and go to a rescue mission type of thing and have an actual have help. I know Pensacola probably doesn't have those things because we're a smaller city, but do you have you heard of something?
Yeah, Pensacola. Are you familiar with some of those places in Pensacola?
Yes, the Lakeview Center
Yes,
is
okay.
an agency here that does a lot of work with recovery efforts, mental health issues, and stuff like that. Mental health is a huge issue here locally as well, and with the homeless population too. They're in that life of drugs, life of crime, and that does end up leading to some types of mental health issues. So there are programs, but again, just like the other programs, there are stipulations, there are requirements that they have to meet, and a lot of them will make a conscious effort, conscious decision to not meet those requirements, and then they're back out on the street. So a lot of the homeless that I deal with will have a Waterfront Rescue Mission ID card. So they've been to the mission before. They've, the only ID card they have is Waterfront. Like they don't have a Florida ID card or driver's license. So when I ask for their name and date of birth, oh, Waterfront again. So they know that the help is there, but yet they choose not to.
Now, you and I have several friends in common, but one of them, I think, is, of course, you went to PCC. So did you have Barry Walker as a professor? Do you know Barry Walker?
I do know Barry Walker. He came after I graduated.
Okay.
So I never.
And John Heckel.
Yes.
Did you have him?
I did.
Okay, yeah. So we have him in common as well.
Absolutely.
But I think it's Brother Walker who mentioned Lakeview to me for the first time.
Okay.
I don't know too much about it, but I know Brother Walker definitely has a burden to help people get the help they need, and I think Lakeview does that. As far as you know, do they? You mentioned the distinction between like psychologists, and kind of that world. As opposed to a Christian worldview. Is Lakeview promoting biblical principles, do you know, in the way that they help people?
As a whole, I don't believe they are.
Okay.
But I do know there are Christians that have worked in that environment for that agency, and they've been able to have good, positive Christian influences there.
Good.
But
Yeah,
I don't think
Brother
that I don't
Walker's one of
think
those.
as a whole, I don't think that their mission statement would be a Christian value.
I got you, yeah.
Yeah.
You
It's
got
good they're helping out though. That's awesome. It's
Yes.
definitely makes a difference for sure. Big need for sure.
Yes, because we can only help them so much on the street. I have an interaction with them for 15 to 20 minutes, maybe.
right.
I can give them, my 2 cents worth. I can give them a little bit of scripture here and there,
Yeah.
but I have to go to the next call.
Yeah.
So I need to take them somewhere where they can have a one-on-one conversation with somebody and help them talk them off that ledge, if you will.
Right. Yeah. What should people do with like panhandlers? How do you, as a law enforcement officer, recommend big-hearted Christians
Sure.
respond when we see a guy holding a sign, or sometimes it's a female holding a sign that says, help needed, or whatever?
I would caution against giving them any type of money or anything of monetary value like that, because if they don't have that accountability, you could be helping fund their drug habit, or you're basically buying them their alcohol, you're basically buying them their cigarettes or whatever. As a Christian, I would rather go buy them a meal and bring them the meal, and then have a conversation with them. Use that as an opportunity to witness to them or share with them something that you learn in your devotions that week. Just give them some spiritual help there. I have seen situations where a family will bring someone actual food, and they turn the food away because
seen
they
that too.
truly just want the money to go fund their addiction.
Yeah.
So it shows where their heart is. So I'm
heartbreaking, yeah.
apprehensive to give them any money.
Sure. Yeah. Now, you and your wife lead a ministry downtown Pensacola. When you're in uniform and on duty, you're off to the next call. Like you said, you
Right.
got like 15 minutes to
Right.
spend with somebody. But I think weekly you guys meet downtown and have
Yes.
ministry to young people at a little youth center. Can you tell us kind of about the heart behind that?
Sure. So Martin Romero is a gentleman I met several years back, and he started this ministry. He calls it the Lighthouse Ministry, and it is in the Brownsville community area of Pensacola. And he started that with a heart for the homeless and the underprivileged in that Brownsville area. And for years, he's been, providing a meal to them, preaching to them, and, only giving them the meal if they'll actually sit there and listen to his preaching. So, otherwise they would just show up, take their meal, and leave.
Sure.
So he's been faithful in that ministry, doing that forever. My wife and I used to live in that Brownsville area, and we had some neighbors who had some young children. There were three or four of them. Their age range was like 4 years old up till 12 years old. And I would go out there and play basketball with them in the street and just have an opportunity to just talk with them, have them into my yard. We'd give them snacks and stuff like that. And we really, the Lord gave us a burden for those children. And the Lord ended up having us move away from that house. And we just lost touch. And we had a burden, again, to go back and try to help those children and just give them God's word. And we felt like that was an open door in that area. Well, that's when we met Brother Martin, and we started talking to him, and we realized there was an opportunity for us to come alongside him and start a children's ministry alongside what he's already established. And the Lord has really blessed. He's provided us a building. He's provided us a basketball court and all these different things to help us reach these children. And on an average night, we do it every Thursday night at 6:30, and on an average night we'll have 15 children show up, and
great.
They're not all the same kids. Some kids come some. If we had every kid come that has ever come, we'd have 25, 30 kids.
Sure.
But the Lord brings who he wants each night. And
you guys give them the gospel.
We give them the gospel.
I've been there when your wife has taught the lesson, and
Yes.
Of course you guys have let me do it, and Andrew I think has taught. Matt's taught.
Yes.
Have you taught there? Have you been there?
No.
It's amazing how the Lord's using that ministry.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We meet them. We go pick them up. It's interesting. At this point, it works out best. We have 3 or 4 couples that work alongside of us, and we all go pick up the kids in our cars. We all split up because the kids aren't all in one area. So we got to go here, 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 here.
Yeah.
We bring them, and we play basketball with them. We play games, and then yes, we feed them and have a devotional with the clear presentation of the gospel, Bible story. Right now, we're going through Proverbs. And we're tying in different Bible accounts, Bible stories with a proverb, and have that Bible study teach that proverb, basically. And we have seen a lot of fruit. We have seen several saved.
Amen.
And so that's encouraging. I've actually been able to be in situations where I'm on the street and I've had a parent complaining about how their kid just isn't listening to them. Their kid is stealing. Their kid is doing all these bad things. And I was actually able to say, hey, I know of a place every Thursday night you could take your children.
Yeah.
And
Wonderful, yeah.
they allowed their kid to come. So there are 3 to 4 kids now that I know for sure that come on a weekly basis. And actually I've come to a youth group here at this church because of that ministry, and because I've been able to use that as a contact when I'm working. So.
That's wonderful, yeah. I know, like, you never know what kids you're gonna meet, what people you're gonna meet in life, and like as Christians, the best thing we can do is just like smile, like, cause you never know if that's the first smile they've seen the whole day,
Right.
like just invest in people, talk to them, and that's wonderful. Giving the gospel, of course, is fantastic. That's really wonderful.
Yeah.
Part of our goal too is to show them love, because a lot of these kids are put to the back burner. Their parents aren't in their lives like they should, and the parents are so willing to give their kids to us to get them off their plate.
Sure.
Because they don't want to deal with them anymore. And so we actually we only have an hour and a half or so a week, but on that hour and a half, they know they're loved.
Good.
They know God
That's
loves
wonderful.
them. And we show them that attention that they need. And hopefully, even if they don't become saved or they don't change their lifestyle in the little bit of time that we have, maybe when they're a teenager or a young adult, they can think back, hey, I remember learning this in Bible club.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe the Lord will use that down the road
Planting
too.
seeds. Yeah.
The good impact that you made on their lives, for sure.
Right.
Absolutely. So here's an interesting question. Now, before we started recording, Mark was asking you about your shift.
Yeah.
And your typical shift, you start at, is it 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock into 1 a.m.?
Yep, 3 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Okay, 3 p.m. And you like that. You were offered other shifts and your
Yes.
family's used to that regimen.
Yes.
Is that right? Now, have you ever been off the clock, supposed to be at home with your family, and then something big's going down in town and they call you to come and be a part of that? You got stories like that?
That's actually happened quite often since I've been on the SWAT team. Prior to that, that wouldn't have been the case. But because I am on a on-call basis 24/7 from being on that team,
Yeah.
I am subject to call at any time. I would say the last time that happened, it was probably 2, 3 months ago. Dead asleep. I think it was 2, 3 in the morning. It was raining. It was cold, and
the bed's warm.
The bed is warm. I wanted to
Comfortable.
stay there.
Right.
I had worked the day before, so I was
Oh, no.
obviously tired.
Yeah.
But we had a call that there was an armed barricade suspect who had threatened his one of his family members, and he had barricaded himself in his room. And so we can't just let that go. That's a danger to the public if he were to get out. And thankfully his family had gotten out of the house. But we had to go deploy at that residence and try to get him to come out. And so that situation took probably 2 to 3 hours. And we were in the rain, in the cold at night, 3 or 4 in the morning. So that was an intense situation where you go from dead sleep to your alarm going off and having to try to get your bearings and try to figure out where are you going to go, what gear do I need to grab. So I usually have things set up, prepared for when I if I do have to go. That makes it a little easier when I'm trying to wake up.
Yeah. There's a code on these cars, these patrol vehicles that you guys have.
Yeah.
Most of them are SUVs, I think.
Sure.
I know there's numbers on the back, and occasionally I'll see an officer parked here or there at the Circle K or whatever.
Sure.
And so tell us about that code. Like some cars are 300 series, 400 series, or whatever.
Right. So that is the radio. We call it the radio number. So when our dispatch will call that deputy, my radio number is 111 right now. So when they call me on the radio, they're going to say 111. They're not going to use my name. So that number coincides with their call number essentially, and that goes on their car. The higher the number, the more junior they are.
Okay.
So if you see a lower number, a 2-digit number, it's probably going to be a sergeant, and they've been here for quite a bit. They have quite a bit seniority and more experience probably. If you see those 300-400 numbers, they're newer. But they're still trained appropriately. They can still handle any situation they're sent to. It just it's a numbering system, just for us to be called on the radio.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, Mark and I were running yesterday morning, I think it was, when we saw 2 or 3, maybe 3.
Yeah, 3 of them.
The SUVs, the
Okay.
Escambia County SUVs, over off the side, and they had responded to something, and none of the officers were by the vehicles. They were all in a facility.
Okay.
But while we were running, I was huffing and puffing. I was looking at the number, trying to kind of get a gauge on who was there, and that kind of thing. And of course, we're always looking for members of our church.
Sure.
We were looking for you and Matt Housem and Officer Bray. So your son, as your son gets older, do you think you desire him to follow in your footsteps and be a law enforcement officer? Would you recommend that to him?
Well, I think my view on that has changed over my career. You asked me that 2-3 years ago, I probably would have told you no, 100% no. Well, then I got to thinking, and I've contemplated that a lot actually, and in my mind, if that's what the Lord calls him to do, I'm going to be 100% behind it. I may not push it, but I would definitely leave it as an option for him. And my thought process behind that is my goal is to raise him in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And I want him to love the Lord. And if that's what God's calling is on his life, and he has the opportunity to do that, and he does love the Lord, he's a perfect candidate to be in law enforcement. He's got a biblical background, and he was raised by Christians. So I think as long as it's the Lord's will, and that's what the calling the Lord has placed on his life, because it is a calling. It's not meant for everybody.
Right.
If it is truly a calling, I would not want him to do it just because Dad did it. I'd want it to be, hey, Dad did this. This was cool, but the Lord is calling me to do this.
Yeah, on his own.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what specifically can we pray for you about? Like in the law enforcement field, there's probably a lot of danger, especially with the squad team. You never know, like it's high intense situations where you need to use critical thinking skills and stuff like that. How can we best pray for you?
That's a good question. So I was actually talking with a gentleman on my shift last night, and we actually were sharing things that we should pray for each other about. I believe this other deputy is a Christian, and some of the things that we were talking about is just for wisdom. Whether you're a Christian or not, we need wisdom in dealing with these situations. We're put into situations every day where, there maybe isn't a right answer. There's not a wrong answer. We just have to come up with a solution. We're trying to come up with a solution for a problem that's been festering for years, and we're trying to solve it in 15 minutes.
Right.
And that takes wisdom. And there are several times that I myself am praying, "Hey, Lord, give me wisdom on how to answer this call," because the notes of the call are crazy. I don't know how to handle this based on this. So help me talk to these people. Another thing that I would encourage people to pray about is the salvation. Like, I don't know how I could do this job if I wasn't a Christian. I know there are several that do, but I have a hope in heaven, and if I were to die today, I know that I'm going to heaven. You have these officers that are put in these life and death situations every day, and they don't have that hope that we do. So that salvation would be another prayer. And then thirdly, I would pray that I pray for their families. Not just their families alone, but the relationship the deputy has or a law enforcement officer has with their families. Because if life isn't happy at home, that does transfer into the work life, and they may not be able to make those good decisions, use that wisdom if their headspace isn't where it should be. So, I would definitely pray for the families, pray for their salvation, and just pray for wisdom in general.
Yeah, and overall protection.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's great.
it's a good question, Mark. What about cell phones and the fact that the public, anytime they see a police officer, it seems like somebody takes out a cell phone.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing, or what's your take on that?
So I think that has changed over the last few years as well. You asked me that a couple years ago, and I would probably have told you it's a bad thing. And there are certain circumstances where I do believe it could be bad. There are a lot of people out there, and I think they call themselves First Amendment auditors. Their sole purpose for videoing is to try to get that police officer to trip up. They're trying to trick them. They're trying to say something to get them to say something wrong, just to get a following, just to get that fan base, just to get the clicks or the views. And if they can get that officer to mess up, they not only get the views, but they may also get a lawsuit. They may also get paid some money for it. And they're making money on these views as well on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. So to me, if that is the sole reason for you videoing, it's kind of frustrating to me. But with the implementation of body cameras, that has really calmed a lot of officers down, because that would put officers on edge. They feel like, okay, I'm being videoed now. I maybe act differently than I normally would. I might second guess myself because I know that because it's being videoed, that they can go back and watch every step of the way and second guess my every move. Well, now we all wear body cameras, at least at our agency. So yes, you're videoing me, but guess what? I'm videoing you back.
Right.
And I get to show it from my perspective.
Yeah.
Whereas they can edit their videos and post it online to show whatever agenda they're trying to push.
Sure.
I see it several times where they'll post this video, and it's been posted of my shift or of me, and it's not what happened at all. It's because they cut out important pieces of that video to make it look like we were using excessive force, or we were doing things we shouldn't have done, or we said things we shouldn't have said, but just because they mixed it all up.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I didn't know about that.
Now, how should, if civilians are observing law enforcement engage with a potential criminal, a suspect, what should civilians do? Should we just observe, or is there ever a time when you'd say civilians need to jump in and help?
Sure. So when you say engage, I'm assuming you mean in a fight or wrestle on the ground or engaging. In that situation, 100%. If you see an officer in distress or he is in a fight with somebody, I will welcome the help. I will even sometimes make a directive to somebody, hey, I need you to come help me. I personally haven't had to do that, but I know of situations, even recently, where a law enforcement officer was struggling, and people came to his aid, civilians, and helped them get him under control.
Great. Yeah.
You don't know what that deputy was going through at that moment. Maybe he got caught off guard, and unfortunately, the bad guy had, one up on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think in that situation, absolutely, a civilian should step in. Now, if it's just a conversation that a law enforcement officer is having with a civilian,
Mm-hmm.
with a potential suspect, or just talking with them, I would say don't approach.
Mm-hmm.
You can observe. It's your right to observe.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had situations where it's been none of this person's business, but they decided to come interject themselves in that scenario, and then now they're distracting the officer from whatever he's trying to handle, and that person ends up going to jail because they are obstructing
Mm-hmm.
the situation. They're obstructing the justice that's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had people, maybe with good intentions, they're thinking they're saving the suspect from whatever bad situation that they believe that suspect's in, and they end up going to jail too because they're hindering the investigation. So.
Yeah.
What are your life verses, Brother Gallion?
So, Psalm 37, verse 4 is a verse that I've claimed. And that is, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Also, I like verse 5 as well. Commit thy way unto the Lord, trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And that is just, it's helped me throughout my life, especially knowing what career the Lord wants me to go into. Because I know that if I trust the Lord to do what I know to be right today, he's going to guide me till tomorrow, and he's going to give me those desires. And I think that's why I'm in law enforcement today. He gave me the desire to be in law enforcement, and I just followed his leading for that desire, and I'm here today. And, it's not like I know what's going to happen 10 years down the road, or when I was in high school, I didn't know where I'd be today, but he helped me make the decisions day by day, and has led me through the way. So it's a promise that he has fulfilled in my life, and I think that's why it hasn't always been my life verse, and I don't think I've always had a life verse, but more recently I can look back and see that he has fulfilled those promises in my life. He has given me the desires of my heart. He has, I have trusted in him, and he has brought it to pass. So I think that's why those are verses I have claimed recently.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Great.
And those verses helped me out when I was thinking about college and what to major in, because it's like that's a good plan to follow for God's will. Like if you're walking with God, having a good relationship with Him, your desires are going to be good desires, and that's most likely God's will. It's good to pursue that, and that's awesome.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. Do you have to spend a lot of time in court? If you give citations to people, you got to go deal with that.
Yes. So more recently now with my position, I'm not in court as much.
Okay.
I have been in court quite often in the past. But there's a couple sayings, if you will, around the office. If you write good reports, you'll spend less time in court.
Okay.
So if you cover all your bases, you articulate it properly, and you don't leave things out of your report, and you do a good investigation, you do a good traffic stop, you don't do anything that's, don't violate any laws, don't violate anybody's rights. When you have these suspects go into court and they talk to their defense attorneys, the defense attorney basically looks at them like, hey, they've had you dead to rights.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, let's take the deal. Let's take the plea agreement.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I wouldn't spend as much time in court as some others would, simply because they just take the deal, right? As far as traffic court goes, there are some, and we talked about our emotions earlier, there are some police officers that take that traffic violation personally. And so then when they're talking with an individual, they're getting heated. And in my opinion, that's kind of ridiculous, because you didn't hurt me. It's not my law, it's the state's law. So why am I getting emotional about you committing this infraction? Like, you made this decision to do that. So it was always my goal to have a pleasant interaction, even if I have to give them a ticket. And there are several times where after I gave them a ticket, they thanked me for it. So I knew that if I could get this person to thank me for the ticket I'm giving them, most likely they're not going to take it to court and try to fight me on it. So I wanted to leave them with a good impression. Now, there's some people that you can't make them happy no matter what. And those people typically I'd go to court for, and I'd win because I did things the right way.
Sure.
But as far as now, I'm the supervisor approving other people's reports and making sure the shift has what they need. So I spend a lot less time in court now.
Yeah, good.
That's interesting. I know my first time getting pulled over, I was like shaking so much. Like they pulled me over and I rolled my window down and I was like, sorry, 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 sorry. Like how can I help you? Like just
Yeah.
shaking. It was just nerve-wracking to get pulled over and have an interaction like that with the
Right.
law enforcement for sure.
Did you
But
get a ticket?
I did, yeah.
Ah.
It was actually a super speeder ticket too, so even more money. So it
Oh.
was expensive. But I
Yes,
learned from
he
it.
has a heavy foot like his mother.
I did learn from it. It's true. It's
Yeah.
important to get that consequence so you can be like, okay, I'm not gonna do this again.
Yes,
It's
especially when it
important.
hurts your wallet.
Yes, yes.
I
for
joke
sure.
about his mom having heavy foot, of course, because I actually have had lots of moving violations when I was an inner city teenager
Sure.
in North Minneapolis, and I'm embarrassed of that. So I'm not proud of that. Like Mark said, he learned from his. I was just more thick-headed.
Sure.
I guess it took me longer to learn from mine.
I had to learn from mine. I was in high school and I got my first speeding ticket.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, having my dad be a police officer did not help me one bit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think he may
'Cause
have
he's a
given.
good, sounds like he's a good dad.
Yeah, I
He's not
guess
gonna
so.
get you out
He
of
didn't
it.
get
You
me
gotta
out of
face
it,
the
and
consequence,
when
yeah.
I brought my dad's name up, it didn't help me at all. So it probably hurt me actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Right. Right.
Oh,
Now, go
about I want to ask about the law enforcement, the reports and stuff like that you have to do. Do you have to like take pictures for like the court cases? I know like in a lot of court cases they have evidence, of
Yes.
the perpetration that was happening. So do you have to take that pictures yourself or do you use the body camera or how do you get that evidence?
So we do take a lot of pictures. If it's a more detailed crime scene, we actually have a crime scene unit that will come out and process everything. They will do the fingerprinting and the DNA. It's kind of like your CSI movies where they
Yeah.
take pictures and they take 100, 200 pictures of it. If it's a more routine task, we do take our own pictures and upload them to our evidence unit. And we will do some of our own crime scene stuff, if you will. But yeah, so our body cam will capture every interaction that we have. But if it's something that, hey, they got a cut on their face during a fight, well, I'm gonna take a picture of that real quick.
Yeah.
Or if they're claiming they had an injury and I don't see an injury, well, I'm taking a picture of that so that they can't,
Yeah.
change their story down the road. So
speaking of cuts and stuff,
Mhm.
anytime I see any of the officers in our church with a Band-Aid on,
Sure.
I'm curious about the story.
yeah.
And you have a Band-Aid on your hand. Did it happen last night or something?
It didn't happen at work. It
Okay.
happened, on a project at the house.
Oh, okay.
Thankfully, I was on a ladder,
Okay.
and the ladder slipped,
Oh.
and I was 12 foot in the air, and I grabbed a brace, and the brace that I grabbed was a sharp piece of metal, and I cut my hand.
God.
So
Okay.
I'm praising the Lord I didn't fall to my death or fall and break some
12
bones.
foot up. Yeah, you
Yes.
can do that. Yeah.
So,
Wow.
but it's a good reminder to make sure your ladder is upright enough and is not
Yeah.
wet.
Yeah. And to maintain that upper body strength.
Yes.
Apparently, you
Yes.
had to kind of stabilize yourself.
Yes.
Good. Here's a fun question, and that is if you could own any car or vehicle, anything out there, money's no object,
Okay.
which one would that be?
Well, growing up, a dream car of mine has always been a '69 Dodge Charger. And I
Okay.
think it's a more of a rare, it's a highly sought after year. That 68, 69, and 70 are all to me beautiful cars. So they're quite expensive. So I don't know if that dream will become true to own one of those.
There's a big motor in there, big V8
There is,
engine.
yes, about I think 375 horsepower.
Okay.
Pretty big for those cars. That'd probably be my dream car.
What about your favorite sport to play? You mentioned basketball a few times. Is that your go-to sport, or?
Growing up, it was soccer, actually.
Okay.
But I haven't had the opportunity to play soccer in forever. I played soccer in college, and I had a great time. I was able to play in the Turkey Bowl that they had
At
there.
the college? Okay.
When the Turkey Bowl was big,
cool.
that was their big deal.
What position did you play in soccer?
I actually played goalie.
Okay.
So
You're stocky enough. You're
Yeah.
filling up the goal a little bit.
yeah. So I had a good time playing that. But I would say more recently now, I have more opportunities to play basketball, and I've really loved, playing basketball here at the church, or
Yeah.
playing pickup ball with the kids at Bible club and stuff like that. So.
Goalie is hands too. You got some big
Yes,
paws, Brother
yes.
Gallion. Yeah, that matters. Who's your best friend in life?
I would have to say my wife. I know that maybe is a typical answer, but she truly is. We've been married, 8 years now, and we do everything together. So I would say she's my best friend.
Okay, other than friends and family, can you give us 3 things you can't live without?
Well, this may be cliche, but I can't live without my Bible.
Oh, yeah,
Any version of it, whether it's my cell phone, Bible, or the actual book.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of projects, so I don't know if I can live without my truck. So I
Okay,
do.
yeah. You have a beautiful truck. That
Thank you.
GMC truck, and it's
Yes.
even patriotic. The
Yes.
letters GMC are in red, white, and blue.
Yes.
I like that.
So I have to have the truck. I know this is maybe a more of a younger generation thing, but I use my cell phone for everything. So I don't know. I think I'd
Okay.
be lost
You need
without
your
it.
cell phone.
So you need it.
Yeah.
He likes to tell me like, "Oh, days were better back when you didn't have a cell phone. I wish we didn't have a cell phone." I'm like, you couldn't do anything today without a cell phone. You need
Yeah.
your cell phone to live, literally every activity you do.
Seems like it.
Except for the Bible, the
Yeah.
others
Mm-hmm.
I truly could do without if I had to.
Yeah.
I could, I could walk to Lowe's and then walk back with that 2x4.
Right.
I don't need that cell phone, but in the day and age we live, they definitely
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
Efficiency.
Yeah.
Now, I think this will be our last question here, unless, Mark, you have anything additional. But, Brother Gallion, do you have a bucket list? And if so, what's on the bucket list? Now, you're a young man, like
Sure.
you in your 30s?
I am. Yes.
Okay, so if the Lord tarries and is coming, like what do you got to get done before?
So, like I said, Bree is my best friend. My wife's my best friend, and so our bucket lists have kind of merged.
Okay.
Some of the things that are on those would be we would like to go on an Alaskan cruise.
Oh, cool.
We've been on several cruises together, but that is one of that is on our bucket list. Before COVID hit, we actually were going to hit another bucket list item, which was a Mediterranean cruise.
Okay.
And we were going to fly to Greece, and we are going to do the whole Mediterranean thing. But that got canceled, so it'd be on my bucket list to actually fulfill that one.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to run another marathon.
Okay.
It'd be marathon number 5, so I'd like to
Wow.
Yeah, I
get
respect that.
one in.
You have us beat. We haven't done
Yeah.
any. We did a half marathon
Yeah.
a couple
Well,
times.
you
but-
should. It's fun.
Yeah.
Well, you can't just do one. Once you done
Okay,
one, you
yeah.
want to do another one.
Yeah. Now the 3 of us have done together a couple half marathons, like
Yeah.
the Crew of Lake.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I right now don't have any ambition to do a full marathon at all because I feel like with the half, you still get people's respect.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
13.1, people are like, okay, because most people don't do that. And so
Right.
it's like, but you don't have to, on a full marathon, you have to do the gels and the tablets and
Yeah.
kind of
You gotta
deal with
plan it out a little more.
yeah. And I've seen videos of these people at like mile 20 hitting a wall
Yeah.
and then 26.2, they're stumbling.
Yes.
and
Yes.
Nothing,
The fun part.
nothing about that appeals to me. So,
I actually proposed to my wife at the end of a marathon.
No
marathon.
way.
So I carried that ring with me all 26.2 miles, and my knees held up to get down on one knee. So
oh, I bet that's
that is like a
adorable.
bucket. That's like a complete bucket list item right there.
Yeah.
Were
So.
you able to get up afterwards?
She had to help me up,
I
but
wouldn't be
yes,
able to get up,
I
but
got
there's no
up.
way.
Yeah, hanging out with you, and of course Mark Jones is a runner, and several of the men in our church. Maybe I'll be inspired by you guys to want to do the full marathon one of these days.
One last bucket list. I know you might relate in this as well. I know you're a motorcycle rider,
Mhm.
but have you heard of the Tail of the Dragon?
No, I don't think so.
It starts, I think, in North Carolina near Asheville. It
Oh,
ends
that's
in
the hills?
Tennessee.
It's like hilly and
It's near
curvy?
the Smoky Mountains, I believe.
I have heard of that.
And it's 11 miles, and in those 11 miles, I think there's 318 some turns.
Wow.
And I can just imagine how beautiful that ride is. So
Yeah.
it's a motorcycle rider's dream.
We should totally.
I don't know if I could handle all 318 turns
Yeah.
in a row, like without stopping, but I think it'd be amazing
Yeah.
to ride the motorcycle up there.
You know, the men's group at our church, of course, we have men's prayer breakfast this Saturday,
Yes.
at the time of this recording, anyways. But I want us to do some of those kinds of things, like specific events for men. And several of the men in our church have motorcycles.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you off camera, but now I'm doing it on camera, about potentially coordinating a ride.
Sure.
Anybody that wants to do it, we can kind of pick a route somewhere local.
Absolutely.
That's a manly thing.
It'd be
to do,
fun. It is
just go on a
manly.
bike
Very
ride.
manly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, anyways, cool. Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us on the
Absolutely.
Strength for Life
Thanks for having me.
podcast today.
of course.
Brother Gallion, we've got some merch for you
All
as
right.
an expression of our appreciation for you
Great.
joining us here. And if you are watching this Strength for Life, we want you to know that you can get this merch for yourself at our website. It is strengthforlife.church. Brother Gallion, my latest book is Issues of the Heart, and I want you to have a copy of that.
Thank you.
Very practical things are dealt with in that book. And then we even got you a trucker-style
Awesome.
hat. Okay.
Just my style.
Yeah, there you go. And then one of our Strength for Life T-shirts. I picked a large for you. I wasn't
Perfect.
sure if you want a large
Yes.
or medium or
That's great.
whatever there, but Yeah, here you go.
Awesome.
And
Thank
thank you so much for just sharing your experiences, your calling, all through the lens of Christian worldview. And
Absolutely.
just so appreciate the men and women that provide protection for us to get to enjoy the freedoms that our country affords us. I just have lots of respect for what you do. So
Absolutely.
thank you
Thank you.
both for joining us. And thank you all for joining us for today's episode, today's podcast of Strength for Life.